So, we are ready for Leviticus chapter 11. Chapter 11.
You've been out of
I made sure to check. You guys know what these? Yeah. You got one? No. No, sit there in front of you. Oh, yeah. So just to give our new people a little bit of an update and to bring us back to where we are, kind of do a refresher because it's been over the summer and for some it's been longer than that. We've been in the book of Leviticus, and the first 10 chapters are about the sacrifices, the 5 different sacrifices within the system. And what we talked about is at the end of Exodus, talked about how they built the tabernacle. And here's a nice little picture. It's probably a better rendition than what most I've seen. Because if you notice, there's little tables down here where people can eat the sacrifice. And out here to the side of the tabernacle, there's people who are praying, worshiping. And, we tend to just think that they came, they brought their sacrifices, and they left. But that's really not the case. It truly was more like a community hub. It was an all-day event to go and offer your sacrifices. Because while sometimes you would get to eat part of your sacrifice, often you would get to, everyone got to eat something that day. And so usually when we brought our sacrifice, it was used to help feed everyone else. And so we were talking about how the tabernacle was less of what we might call a church building and more like what we might call a food truck. That God just put up this giant smoke signal and said, everybody come and let me feed. That as much as we think of the sacrificial system being about you've done something wrong and you've got to make things right, God's saying, you think you've done something wrong and I will make you. And so just come to me. We talked at length about how the leaders have to go first because someone has to get this started. And as leaders, we should necessarily be the ones who lead our people in what is the best practices of how to live this life. And so they would start the sacrifice, and everyone would feed off of that. And so we discussed those 5 different sacrifices. The Olah, which is the burnt offering. This is the one that no one eats. This is that you're looking for God's revelation. You're like, this is so important that I give everything over to God. And we ask that question, what are the questions that are just so heart-wrenching that you give it all? And we talked about how an equivalent within our faith might be the prayer and fast. Those times whenever we really just need to hear from God, and so we will enter a season of prayer and fast. The second one is the minhah, or the tribute, the first fruits, the grain offering. This would be the tithe. This is their offerings. This is their tithe. This is saying, God, you have blessed us, and we return to you your due. And the reality is that everyone got it. Yes, is this the one that everyone gets to eat? Yeah, family, yes, everyone gets to eat from the tithes and the offerings. Priests did their part. And, but the steak offering, the minhah, everyone gets to eat. The third one is the peace offering. This is whenever, this is always plural. This was the one where there's usually 2. This means that something has gone wrong and peace needs to be made. So you give the offering whenever you're going to God to seek the peace, and then you give the offering again at the end whenever God has given you peace. And usually this is eaten between individuals. Say, I don't remember who our examples were back this spring, but 2 people were fighting, they would bring the peace offering, and then they would bring it back whenever they had reconciled. And so everyone benefits when 2 people are brought to peace. The fourth is the hatat, the sin offering, the separation offering. And again, this one, though, the person who brings it, they don't partake it. Everyone else does. Because when we confess our sin, when we acknowledge our brokenness, it doesn't just restore us, it doesn't just heal us, but it actually restores all of the community. And the last one is the Asham, the guilt offering, the trespass offering. This is usually done around the Day of Atonement, but it could be done any other time. The guilty party gives it, and the priests and everyone else, they partake. And so, yes, on the one hand, this is about us being made right with God. But it's more about us drawing close to God so that God can make us right. In a very real sense, the Jewish people, they practiced their faith the way they were supposed to. It's very much the way we do as Christians. That we confess our sin and God forgives us, right? That's what we believe. We talk about bringing it to God and laying it at the cross. And so this was an opportunity. And we talk about how if God was really trying to hide his people in the desert as they made their way to the Holy Land, he wouldn't have had a giant pillar of cloud in the day and a giant pillar of fire at night. That's flashing neon sign. God wanted people around him to know that they were there. Because remember, the children of Israel were meant to be a nation of priests. Aaron was a priest to all and was the example for the Levites. The Levites were priests to the people, and all of Israel was meant to be priests to the nations, so that everyone got to be made right with God. And of course, as we know, especially if you run into Genesis or part of Exodus, we as human beings rarely do this stuff up. Bible is less about how to do it right, more about how, in spite of the fact that we do it wrong, God keeps pushing it. Does that kind of sum up where we've been for those of you guys who've been here? So, with that in mind, we now move into Leviticus chapter 11. Now, this is getting into the priestly law, and I'll give one more reminder. When we looked at the end of Exodus in particular, every time we had a law, you guys remember what the question was we're supposed to ask? How did it pertain? Who does it protect? When we read the law, it might sound foreign to us. We have to ask that question. If God is giving a rule, he's giving a rule on purpose. It's going to have an important purpose, and it's always to protect someone. Does that make sense? So, with that in mind, my first paragraph is Leviticus chapter 11, verses 1 through 8. So, it says, oh, and just for the record, you can bring any translation of the Bible you want. In fact, we encourage different translations because we found that different Hebrew words and Greek words can be kind of translated a little differently, and we need to hear them. So, mine is the English Standard Version, just the one I grabbed when we started this, so that's where I'm going. Not saying it's better or worse, it just is. So, 1 through 8. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, speak to the people of Israel, saying, these are the living things that you may eat among all the animals that are on the earth. Whatever parts of the hoof is a cloven hoof, and choose the cut among the animals you may eat. Nevertheless, among those that chew the cud or part of it, you shall not eat these: the camel, because it chews the cud, but does not part the hoof, it is unclean to you. And the rock badger, because it chews the cud, but does not part the hoof, it is unclean to you. And the hare, because it chews the cud, but does not part the hoof, it is unclean to you. And the pig, because it parts the hoof and is cloven-footed, but it does not chew the cud, and is unclean to you. You shall not eat any of their flesh, and you shall not touch their carcasses. They are unclean to you. So, my question, what do you think? What question does it make you ask? Anything stand out? Somebody nitpicking every year. So he's nitpicking every year. Why would he do that? No. But if you were raised on animals, why not knowing that?
And if the animal is unclean, but doesn't right with the animal, so when they touch the animal, they become.
It says, do not eat its meat or touch its carcass. It doesn't say you can't use it as a beast of burden. It's not about touching it that makes you unclean. Pork is in this category, rabbits in this category, camels in this category, and it's a badger. I'm just saying I don't think anything about that looks good. What it says, coney. Spell it again. C-O-N-E-Y.
Now mine says Hyrs.
Iris?
Yes.
Okay, coney.
Iris is like a little rodent.
Oh, it says or puny or rock.
Oh,
But it's fine.
there's an iris or coney or a rock.
Like that would be a lie.
So this is in the rodent category, so are rabbits. What do we know about rodents today? They carry diseases on their fingers. So maybe all feet. Well, then you have some rabbit. And do they have thermometers at this point in time? And they've absolutely got my nice little thermal that pull the trigger and, you know,
And goes to your phone and tells them.
it goes to my phone and tells me whether or not I got it. The reality is, I personally believe, if you remember, God said back in Exodus, if you follow my commandments, you will live long in the land, you will not get disease or illness, and I will make it to where your stuff doesn't wear out, remember? And your women won't miss you. Those were the 4 promises he gave. So if we remember those promises, and we know that rodents carry disease, if you just stay away from rodents, are you going to catch the diseases? No. Now, sometimes you can't help when the rat comes in, you just kick it out, right? But don't eat the thing unless you just absolutely have to survive. But you'd be unclean. And remember, unclean isn't a permanent status. Unclean means you go and you wash, you're good in the morning, right? So what do we know about pigs? Pigs will eat anything, they will wallow in their own filth. They absolutely can give diseases.
But man, are they ugly.
But I'm grateful to not be a Jew because bacon is my favorite sauce. But again, if it's not cured right and then it's not cooked right, it will absolutely make you sick. And you get sick and you throw up, does that not contaminate everything around? And if you've seen any kind of Hollywood things, often what happens when the first person throws up, there's a chain reaction of throwing, right? I truly believe that God is saying, these creatures, it's not, He created them, right? So they're still good. But His promise to them was, if you follow my rules, you'll stay up. Today, we know there are very specific rules in cooking pork to make sure that you don't miss. We have very specific rules in how pork is processed. The FDA put a lot of regulations on more on pork than on beef, for certain. And so for me, this is God saying, I told you I'd keep you well. Here's one of the ways that if you follow my ways, you will be well. Does that make sense? Anything else you notice? I really wish Rex Carroll King was here. You might know how many stomachs she has. Cows have 4. I think some have like
Going back to the FFA is.
At 4. And I called them because we talked about that. And I was surprised, they didn't have.
I do. I think that there really is something about that the animals that God says are safe and clean have multiple stomachs, so they multiply process the stuff before their body turns it into their body. And so it's add extra filter.
Yeah, for.
So the goats have more than one stomach? I'm curious now. Goats have 4 stomachs? Maybe there's something there. Just a friend of mine says that, anytime that an animal can take grass and grind it through 4 stomachs and turn it into meat, that's probably helpful. So what God is saying is, here are some very clear markers. Do they have a hoof? Is the hoof split? And do they chew the cud? Which is running through extra stomachs.
I believe she, so leave that, the rear side. Like, 40 definitely not. Maybe you
I don't think it matters, the temperature matters as much because I'm thinking of like a cooking show, things like to watch it, usually lamb and that was close to rare.
Yeah.
So I would guess because it is well, that the cooking temperature and how done it is no longer matters.
What does the cloven hoof have?
So I think it's purely a marker. So a horse has a hoof, and a horse chews the cud, but it actually, I think, horse only has 1 stomach. So it's less healthy.
But a horse doesn't have like a cow's stomach.
No, but horse doesn't have the cloven. Yeah. It mentions the camel. The camel has a cloven foot, but it's not hooked. It's got toes. And camels store stuff for a very long time. Anything that they drink, anything that they eat, they put it into their fat and it's stored. So if a camel gets a disease, it's going to store it for a very long time.
Camel spit.
They're not recommended. Anything else? What you thinking?
No, I was, for the season.
Oh, the spitting camels.
It did mention, birds that are like, vultures and stuff that.
Haven't got there. Go ahead to the next paragraph. Okay, my next paragraph is 9 through 12. These you may eat of all that are in the waters. Everything in the waters that has fins and scales, whether in the seas or the rivers, you may eat. But anything in the seas or the rivers that does not have fins and scales of the swimming creatures in the waters, and the living creatures that are in the waters, detestable. You shall regard them as detestables. You shall not eat any of their flesh, and you shall detest their carcasses. Everything in the waters that does not have fins and scales is detestable. What do you think?
No whales.
No whales,
Shut down like.
no sharks,
Catfish.
no catfish,
Okay.
clams, nope, no shellfish.
I'm just thinking.
Squid, all those things are out. Lobster too. Wow. What do you think? Remember what I said earlier, right? Well, let's start with the easy, all the shellfish, which I absolutely love. But some people do have allergies to their bottom feeders. They are bottom feeders. They are filter feeders. They literally anything that they can grab through their filter, they will eat. And I know there are one thing that we will not do. I have yet to have oysters on the half shell. I know people consider it a delicacy. I don't mind oysters, but I don't do goods. There's fine. So again, if they're a bottom feeder, if they're a filter feeder, what are they taking? All of the dirt and junk and crap from everybody else. So if there's some disease to be had, there's a likelihood that they will have contract. Right? And that's all the shellfish. It doesn't matter if they're freshwater shellfish or saltwater. We now know when you get shellfish in, you need to put them in a tank, you need to let them sit overnight, you need to change your water at least once, so that they filter all that stuff out of your system, and then you gotta cook it to a specific temperature, or it's not good for you. So we know filter feeders are out. But what about scales and fins? Why would they do scales and fins?
Well, they eat other creatures. Fish eat other fish.
Fish will eat other fish. Yeah.
The fins are filtered.
No.
The fins are filtered.
What kind of water animals don't have fins? Turtles. Turtles don't have fins? What other water animals don't have fins? Octopus, squid, eels. What do we know about these creatures? All of these creatures will eat any other animal. Octopus will eat each other, squid will eat each other, and any animal that eats another animal will take in its blood, and therefore runs the risk of carrying that animal's diseases.
Well, lion and tiger.
They're out. All carnivores are out. Okay, what about the animals that have fins but no scales? Our beloved catfish.
I think that's why, I mean, on around those that we put back with, it's not like river. Is that,
Absolutely. My grandpa said the only way you can make catfish good is you gotta nail them up to the wall, clip their tail, let all the blood drain out, and then you clean it and eat it. You gotta let all of that stuff, because what do catfish eat? They're bottom feeders, they'll eat anything. Again, same category, right? If they'll eat anything, then there's a chance that they can eat something that's diseased. And so if you just stay away from all of them, you're out. Turtles are omnivores. They'll eat worms and bugs and plants, dead stuff. And so again, they may not be bad. All of these things today, we know how to cook them now so we can eat. You know how to keep it safe. But again, you can't go down to the corn market, get it, sorry, the corn market, they had closed up shop about 100 years ago. It's now out of the way. They didn't have that. So God said again, all my rules I will keep you healthy. And so if you look at how we classify animals.
So, I know, you're probably, but you, so. You're very old, you know that, and you evolve, and you gain knowledge, but you have knowledge now of how country, evolve technologies, so, you know, temperature, all that stuff. So when did work become okay and some of those? That really wasn't, that's what that was, man.
Did Jesus tell us that?
So Jesus says it's not what goes into the body that makes you unclean. It's what comes out of the body that makes you. It's the things that come out of our heart and our minds, the words, it's the thoughts, it's the deeds. That's what actually makes us unclean. In this instance, God is saying you're unclean because you might be carrying a disease that could infect everybody else. By the time of Christ, they've developed full measures of cooking, and they have stoves, and they have cookware. They've learned how to use iron for skillets, and it has evolved a lot. But even though Jesus says it's not what comes in that makes you unclean, and then in the book of Acts you have the instance where Peter's up on the roof and he's praying and sees this vision and all the animals are in a blanket and God says, take, kill, and eat. He's like, never once have I done that. I don't eat things that make you. And it happens 3 times. And he goes, this is God saying that all things we clean. That is still true. But God's promise from back here is also simple. If we were to live by a kosher diet, we would still have that promise that we wouldn't get the diseases.
Yeah, even with all knowledge that people argue that more unhealthy today than they ever have.
Oh, yeah. People could absolutely argue that we are more unhealthy today than we ever. Just because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it. Which doesn't that sound like something Paul said? The things that I want to do, I don't do. The things that I don't want to do, are the things I do because there's sin living within me. And so this principle, while some would say it's outdated, the truth of it is still true. God says if you follow these rules, you will not get sick, you'll live longer lives, and I will do my best to keep you well. I think that principle is here. Now, to be fair, if I lose about 20 years off my life because I'm eating bacon, maybe it's a fair trade. I said 80s. That's not, you start with 120 in a year. So I'm at 100. It's okay. She's still giving this thing out.
Almighty.
But do you hear what I'm saying? I don't think God's promise has been negated just because God wrote us, because now you have the ability to correctly you can do them. That doesn't necessarily mean you should. It just means you can. There's a lot of things that are good for us. There's a lot of things that are bad for us, and then there's a number of things that are in the middle. They're not necessarily bad, but they're not necessarily good either. Does that make sense?
You can do maybe moderation, eating back then, didn't have all the different foods and preparations and everything we have now.
Oh, absolutely.
How many ways did they cook?
So, the meat that they were cooking, how were we cooking? Remember, we had a giant big spit in the middle, it was an 8x8, altar that they burned their sacrifices on and cooked them on. The only way to do this is slow roast. It's flame kissed grilled beef. And so therefore, that's the way they do it. So therefore, anything that has to be made sure that it's cooked all the way through. We can't wait in line for the person who decides to bring in the pig, and it's got to be cooked to the right temperature. Because everybody else has got their sheep and their cow, and that can be done really quick. Let's move on.
I like to cook it out.
Elephant doesn't have a split hoof, so it's not clean. Sorry. They have toes and they're not split up. And the answer is you eat the elephant one bite at a time. The elephant in small chunks because nobody's got to grill them. So that might be a challenge, because there we work on. Of course, I've not seen the whole elephant down at the butcher shop. But yeah, the reality is the cooking methods that they have are limited. Their daily diet was mostly fruits and nuts and bread and wine. They would have meat only when they went to the tabernacle. Whenever everybody else was having a barbecue, they would join in. But if it wasn't your time and you hadn't sinned, then there's no reason to go join the barbecue. So your primary food was fruits, nuts, cheeses, bread. Any other thoughts?
I'm just thinking about
I don't, that'd be really nice. Between the walking and the fruit, maybe.
that.
Any other thoughts? Anybody got?
Nope.
Okay. My next paragraph is 13 through 19. This is getting into your section, Jim. You have a notion of jumping ahead. That's the Jim thing. 13. These you shall detest among the birds. They shall not be eaten. They are detested. The eagle, the bearded vulture, the black vulture, the kite, the falcon of any kind, every raven of any kind, the ostrich, the nighthawk, the seagull, the hawk of any kind, the little owl, the cormorant, the short-eared owl, the barn owl, the tawny owl, the carrion vulture, the stork, the heron of any kind, the hoopie, and the bat. Okay, I've gone through 2 categories. Can we figure out this? Well, let's start at the end. What is a bat? Mammal. But it's a rodent. It's related to the rodents. Carries diseases, just like rodents. So, that carries diseases. Yeah, okay. What about the rest of these things? Seagulls. Seagulls are dirty. Seagulls will eat anything. They'll pick around and for other animals. So this kind of fits into that bottom feeder category, right? Vultures, stork and heron. I don't know. Stork and heron. Okay, we've got 3 in here that I think are a little unique. Stork, heron, and the third one is vulture, or the ostrich. Okay, so stork and heron. Let's deal with those. What are storks and herons? What do they eat?
Fish.
They eat fish. Do they only select which fish they eat, or will they eat any fish? They'll eat any fish, which puts them in the category like those other fish that eat anything, right? They will eat the bottom feeders, and if you eat a bottom feeder, you've got whatever the bottom feeders. Ostrich. Drumsticks are too big.
Yeah.
Too fast to catch, but
They have multiple stomachs. I looked up what animals.
oh, you looked at what animals have multiple stomachs. Do you think it? So why do you think of ostrich? Anybody know how dangerous ostriches are? Very dangerous.
Turkeys.
Like turkeys, turkeys are mean, absolutely. There's a difference between ostriches that are raised in captivity or moderately tame and wild ostriches. Very. My guess on this is just my guess, my best guess. Remember, God said they will live long lives, right? If you're going to take down an ostrich, it's going to take a number of people and probably someone might care. So you're better off just leaving them alone. We don't have bows and arrows or shotguns or anything like that. Take it down from 150 yards away. So you got to get up at it with a spear and a club, and if you're lucky, you got a sword. If you're less lucky, you got a knife. But you got to get in close with the knife. So my only guess is God saying, this thing's bigger than you are. Just leave it alone.
So what about when you eat like the ostrich eggs?
So notice it doesn't say anything about eggs. We have not heard anything about eggs whatsoever. Not yet, have we? Yeah, we know an ostrich egg, if you eat an ostrich egg, cans are just really stinking expensive. I think one ostrich egg is like $150. But of course, an ostrich egg, you scramble that thing, and it'd be at least all of us in this room are there. You would need it?
See a lot of hot sauce on that.
Well, I mean, duck eggs are good. One duck egg's about like 2 medium to medium large eggs. I've never tried goose or turkey eggs or anything like that. I don't know. We really haven't heard about eggs yet. So
Madison must live on chicken.
Why are chickens still okay? They eat anything and they will eat each other.
Back to the way you cook them.
So I asked my friend Daniel this question because the moment we were discussing all these kosher animals, and notice chickens aren't mentioned. First of all, you need to know that chickens really didn't exist in the Middle East at this point.
Modern
Chickens,
chicken.
modern, what we know of as modern chicken really got its start, I think, in China. And when chickens were kept around for most of human history, they were kept around only for their eggs. We didn't eat them because their eggs could keep coming. You kill the bird and you no longer get the eggs. I don't know why the Jews say that turkey and chicken are kosher. And for the record, peacock is also kosher. Because peacock is just an African pretty turkey. That's all it is. Very noisy, yes. My parents have some. It's at the other house. They haven't brought it over to the new house yet. They're also mean. So, to be honest with you guys, I don't have a good answer. Because I don't think realistically they should be considered kosher. But for whatever reason, modern Jews say that chicken and turkey are kosher.
When you eat bugs, it tastes better. What is that?
Eating bugs, there's nothing wrong with. It's when they eat other animals. Bugs are in a different category. They're in the crawly category.
Why do you think that they went so specific with all the different types of owls, but other birds they just did like fry? Great.
Oh, well, that little owl, it just eats bugs. Is it okay? What do you know about owls as a whole?
They eat rodents?
They eat rodents. What else do we know about owls? Anybody remember your fifth grade biology?
They don't really digest anything, they spit it back out.
They only have one entrance and exit for their digestive system. They eat it in the mouth, it goes in the stomach, they digest what they can, the bones and everything that's nasty, they spit it back out. I don't remember what they're called, but they're disgusting. I remember having to dissect one of those to figure out what to eat. An animal that doesn't completely digest its food is unclean. Because again, can we be guaranteed that it got rid of everything that it's supposed to get rid of? It doesn't matter if it eats rodents or what it eats, it's unclean. Does that make sense? I'm gonna ask Daniel about ostriches. I gotta figure this out. And I gotta have him remind me of why I think chicken is nasty. After we raise chickens,
Do you have each?
Oh, wait.
oh, absolutely.
You don't taste.
I would do it because a farm raised fried chicken tastes really stinking good. But butchering the thing and butchering like 30 of them all at once, that smell doesn't leave your nostrils for like a week and a half. It's just nasty. And serious, if you get a chicken that gets wounded and it shows a little blood, the rest of them will peck at it and eat it. And they'll eat the insides out on the chickens. They're nasty. So I'm not for sure. I will ask the question because now I'm curious about ostriches. I'm gonna trust God. They got toes, so that's not a foot. Let it go with that. Notice it hasn't said what kind of birds are doing it, right? We know they eat quail. What do we know about quail? Supplement of manna. Quail only eat berries, grasses, and bugs. That's it. They will not eat other. I say other animals. If you remember back to creation, there was the winged animals in the air, there was things in the sea, there was the domesticated animals, the wild beasts, and the creepy crawly things. That were kind of the divisions that God made, right? Essentially, domesticated animals were the only category of things we were allowed to eat, and now it's fair. Some any other?
Did we not have ducks around or anything?
In the desert.
Yeah, so I mean, there's water and.
Okay, let's have this conversation. She brought up hippos. Hippos are what? They're water animals. Do they have scales? Do they have fins? Not clean. Because they are omnivores and they eat almost anything. In fact, hippos are more dangerous in the Nile. You can take one down, but it'll probably kill a couple of people before you get it. Yeah. Gator has scales, but it doesn't have fins. And what do we know about alligators? The tail is good, the rest of it's not. But they eat almost any other animal, and they're a bottom feeder. And again, same problem, same kind of situation. Keep going. 20 through 23. All winged insects that go on all fours are detestable to you. Yet among the winged insects that go on all fours, you may eat those that have jointed legs above their feet, with which to hop on the ground. Of them you may eat the locust of any kind, the bald locust of any kind, the cricket of any kind, and the grasshopper of any kind. But all other winged insects that have 4 feet are detestable.
I didn't know that was more than one brand of locusts, all locusts.
I don't know. You know what the difference between what a locust actually is?
Not a grasshopper.
It is a grasshopper. A locust is a grasshopper that has been agitated and it flips a switch and enzymes released and they take off. And then they just get ravenous. They will eat any plant. They swarm. But if you get too many grasshoppers in a single location and they start bumping into each other, it's like something tells them, hey, we're in danger. And so they flip that switch, releases the hormone, and off they go. And the moment that they go off, anytime that they touch another grasshopper, they can set that one. They're stampeding. A locust is just a stampeding grasshopper.
You know, when we came back to the gate Sunday night, us 6 o'clock, all the way over, we ran through the grasshopper in the air. Thousands. They even picked one off with windshield. Most of them.
Were they still green or had they turned brown?
It looked brown, but you know, they were just going like this.
If they were brown, they were locusts. Because when they're green, they're calm and they're on the ground and they're doing their thing. I don't know why, I just remember looking that up. What's the difference between a locust? I saw a picture of a locust and you look at it and it looks like a grass. It's just, they're different colors. Basically, they've said, now, there are some that I think just actually are more apt to go locust on things.
You would be both like the bad guys.
Notice how they act.
Yeah.
Grasshoppers are fairly docile. The bad guys in Bug's Life, they're all brown and they're angry, they're gonna eat everything.
The locust that breaks the shell of that you hear chattering in the house,
That's a cicada.
that's different,
Yeah, it's a different creature.
but that's for it.
I think it actually has 6 limbs.
It,
Yeah.
okay,
And wings.
all I see is a shell, I don't like the matter. Well, just a footnote that you, for what you said, although insects have 6 legs, perhaps people at ancient times did not have the ordinary legs, 2 large legs without. So it is referred to as on as.
So most insects have 6 or more legs. If it has more than 6 legs, talking about millipedes, centipedes, and the like, they eat dead stuff. Spider. Or they're spiders. What do we know about spiders? What do spiders eat? Other animals, other bugs, belly bugs. So if it eats other things, is it clean? We've already determined that, right? So spiders are out, anything that eats dead stuff is out, kill bugs and all those other things that, termites that went on.
Pretty sure.
Inhaling one is one thing, remember what it says, if you eat it, you're unclean. What do you do to be clean? You wash, next day you're good. Oh, I eat lots of bugs in here, some of them on purpose, some of them not. I couldn't bring myself to eat the scorpion in the lollipop. It was just.
What the woman to eat well.
Big fan of the red.
Produce etymology from. Critters.
Yeah, so
That like crickets.
cricket, notice it lists crickets and grasshoppers. The reality is these creatures only eat plants or plant-based materials. Crickets, we don't like them in our closets because anything that's cotton, they'll eat it. But cotton is just plant-based material. Linen, plant-based material. They really don't touch the rayon and plastics. So again, it's that reality of if it eats other animals, it's off the table because there's a chance it could carry the disease of whatever it ate. You good? Keep going. 24 to 28. And by evening you shall become unclean, where it touches the carcass, it shall be unclean until the evening, and where it carries any part of the carcass, wash its clothes and be unclean until evening. Every animal that parts the hoof, but is not clothed in the foot, does not chew the cud, is unclean for you. Everyone who touches them shall be unclean, and all that walk on their paws among the animals that go on all fours are unclean to you. Whoever touches their carcass shall be unclean until the evening, and he who carries their carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. They are unclean to you. So notice man's best friend and the animal that owns man, cats and dogs, they're on their paws, right? It doesn't say that touching them makes you unclean. It says carrying their carcass makes you unclean. And with all of these categories, if you are unclean, what do? Wash your clothes, and you're unclean until night. And at night, we go to sleep, and when we wake up, anything that's on us says bacteria or something like that, by that point, it's. Are we making sense? I mean, we all know that some of these things, I don't know why they eat dogs over Asia, that doesn't make any sense to me, but they do. I don't know why you want to eat a cat, that's just. We know that people eat all kinds of animals all around the world. But again, like we said, we have better cooking methods. We put these animals under a microscope, looked at their muscular structure, see whether or not they carry disease. That's why you get every cookbook, right? You turn to the meat section, it has a temperature gauge. Meats must be cooked to these temperatures. And except with beef, sheep, and goat, and they can actually cook a lot lower temperature. Four stomachs. You said ostriches have four stomachs too? I'm curious. I really gotta figure out the ostrich. I was gonna play. Remind me to text Daniel and ask him why ostrich is pregnant. Keep going. 29 through 39. Ooh, good big chunk. All right. And these are unclean to you among the swarming things that swarm on the ground: the mole rat, the mouse, the great lizard of any kind, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the sand lizard, and the chameleon. These are unclean to you among all that swarm. Whoever touches them when they are dead shall be unclean until evening, and anything on which any of them falls when they are dead shall be unclean, whether it is an article of wood, or a garment, or a skin, or a sack. Any article that is used for any purpose, it must be put into water, and it should be unclean until evening. Then it shall be clean. And if any of them falls on into an earthenware vessel, all that is in it shall be unclean, and you shall break it. Any food in it that could be eaten, on which water comes, shall be unclean. And all the drink that could be drunk from every such vessel shall be unclean. And everything on which any part of their carcass falls shall be unclean, whether an oven or stove, it shall be broken in pieces. They are unclean and shall remain unclean, for nevertheless a spring or a cistern holding water shall be unclean. But whoever touches the carcass in them shall be unclean. And if any part of the carcass falls on the seed grain that is to be sown, it is clean. But if water is put on the seed, and any part of the carcass falls on it, it is unclean to you.
On verse 36, you said, unless a spring or a cistern collecting water shall be unclean.
Oop, I misread that. Yep, a spring or a cistern holding water shall be
Consider water clean. He comes off your boat, first droppings and everything else for wash it into your system.
Maybe they filter this.
Maybe they did filter theirs. Maybe they boiled their system water. I don't know. Now, one of the key differences, whether this is an open system or a closed system. Now, if you think back, okay, let's take this point. Do you remember whenever we had the encounter of Jacob discovering Rachel? He goes up and he's fleeing from his brother, right? And he's amongst his mother's relatives, and he's at this well. It's a cistern, really is what it is. It's not really what we would call a well. It's a cistern, and the shepherds are there, but they're not watering their flocks. There's a rock over there. They wait until all the sheep are there before they remove the rock, so that everyone can water their sheep, and then they put the rock back as soon as possible. Remember that story? Now, it didn't have a whole lot of meaning then. Bring it here, why would they keep a rock on top? So nothing falls down into it. If something sits in there, if it just falls in and you grab it and pull it out, the water should be dissipated enough. Now, if you're just talking about a little puddle of water, maybe that's on.
If you've got decays in there.
Right. If it's not covered, you got standing decay. But a spring where the water is constantly moving doesn't have standing water, even if something unclean thing falls in it, it just keeps moving. So you just get the new water, not standing. Because again, what did God promise? Don't get sick, live long lives, which will follow His rules. You can technically drink water that's had stuff in it. There's just a chance you might get sick. And if you do, what's it say? you're unclean, and if you're unclean, you clean yourself, you wash off your clothes, and then at evening, you're clean. It's not about permanent uncleanness, it's saying, you better take it serious for the next couple hours, make sure that nothing happens.
They, I guess my community shop, they, washing. Do they do that a lot more often? Because, when you think about, I've probably been in the industry for years and, when you're going to do one with that, or you think about it. But this sounds like a little more regular.
I think God instituted far more regular hygiene than they were used to. Really neat thing, we won't see it for a while, but when you get to Solomon building the temple, they moved from the tabernacle to the temple. And it talks about instead of the wash basin, remember that wash basin was like 6 foot, basically at 6 foot around, it's probably about 2.5 feet. That's deep enough you can really wash it. You know how big the basin was for the temple? They didn't call it a basin anymore, they called it the sea. And it was over 6 foot deep in the center. Literally, the priests could walk down in and wash themselves and walk out. Every time you went to the temple, they washed themselves. They were made. Typically, people went at least once a week to the temple, which was once a week is still far better than however often you got the chance to do it when you were asleep. And again, it talks about washing everything regularly. Water was important to wash things, and people actually found it odd that they washed stuff so much. It was seen as a hindrance. Why are you spending so much time doing that? Well, God told us to clean ourselves. Every time that they go to the table, they wash their hands. Now, they would wash their hands with water, and if they had it, a little bit of lemon or vinegar. Now, that's not as good as our soap today, but it's a whole lot better than nothing. And washing even with just water, we know it's the wringing of the hands that often kills more things than even the soap does. The soap will remove a lot of the surface stuff, the bacterial stuff. They've done studies, it's more about the wringing. And so, again, they absolutely, this is, God's giving them hygiene practices. Every time you eat, you wash. Every time you sit at the table, you wash. When you come in at night, you wash your feet and your hands. What else do you notice in this section?
At the beginning of our, and the crocodile is one you should be.
We've already discussed crocodiles now, they eat just about anything. Most lizards will eat a lot of different things. Worms, bugs, other lizards, birds. Anything that they can actually catch. Sometimes things that are bigger than them. What else do you notice in here? Verse 32 talks about wood, garments, skins, sacks. They all just need to be washed, right? But notice what does it say about worms? You got break. Why?
Well, it probably wasn't placed like our today's is porous.
Absolutely. And porous things will hold all kinds of stuff. What? Yeah.
Oh, this is, only Gary would understand, but we have this kettle. And I keep telling them it tastes, it tastes like the paint. And it's a iron skillet, Dutch oven, we talked about it today. And because he was talking about the, soup. And I said, you can't use it. And he said, no, it doesn't.
When was the last time you seasoned?
Oh,
That's why I go over. Is it, that is a portion you can. Because you work everything out, of course.
Because
Stuff in.
so if you are going to wash it, we know now is you wash it really good with soap and water, you scrub it, you put it in the fire, bring it to hot. It kills off everything. Once it cools down, you put oil on it and grease the whole thing. And then you bake it again to where that oil bakes in and creates a glaze of sorts, and now you can use it.
I got some work to do.
I think what she's saying, yeah, use that. Now, if, what? I'm making sure that he's. So, if you have, how many people have COVID or culinary class? What do they talk about meats? Should you have the same cutting board for different kinds of meats?
No,
Nope, you should have chicken and it should have its own, seafood should have its own, pork should have its own, beef should have its own. Why? Cross contamination. Do we do this very well? You do? You're one of the few people I know who does. We used to. We had different colored cutting mats. You got different colors, do you use them correctly?
Chicken, red is my pink, that's kind of the color of the.
Right.
Green is my greens.
see, the ones we have at the restaurant, vegetables are green and yellow, meats are blue and red. That's what they sell them
Now, in theory, that's okay, because again, we know that most of the soaps we have today will kill most of the bacteria and they're not necessarily harmful to us in the amounts that we get. You don't get it all washed off, that little amount of soap is not bad for us. But the reason that they say that is because we know there's cross contamination. And so therefore, anything that's porous, which, let's be honest, if you got, especially if you got one of the poly kind of cutting boards, they're absolutely porous. They will hold stuff. You've got to sanitize those things if you want to use them regularly. They're cheaper.
I understand that wood has the ability to kill bacteria.
Wood becomes, there's something about the tannins in the wood that it actually repels bacteria. I don't know exactly, I don't remember how it works.
Special woods.
They're it's special woods.
That's why a lot of times you see, you have many woods that are multi woods.
They're maybe.
Hard woods, you gotta go with the hard ones, you can't go soft.
like a butcher wants something with it.
With the wheels removable, wood. And the,
What they tell you is those polyurethane or whatever they are boards, they are easier to clean and sanitize because if you don't get wood dried completely, it will start to warp. If you push them and if you read their fine print, they'll actually tell you they are no more sanitary than wood or stone butcher blockings. It's just they're cheaper and easier to make.
Stone you can kind of rub down, pass that top layer. Then you can sand it down, pass that top layer.
Yep.
Cleaner finish.
Which is why, if you remember, okay, I'm gonna pull up another New Testament. Whenever Jesus turned the water into wine, the jars were made out of what? Do you remember? No. It says they are stone jars, not clay. Clay is porous. These were stone jars for cleaning, purification. So anytime that they wanted to keep water on hand, clean, it was always put in a stone jar.
Don't you hold longer where clay would eventually.
Clay is porous, it will eventually see.
Terracotta,
Yep,
terracotta.
yep. Anything else you notice in this nice big 10 verse section? How are we doing on time?
Yeah,
We've got 20 minutes yet. You want to finish the chapter? Sure. Okay. All right, next paragraph, 39 through 45. No, that's 2 paragraphs, 39 through 40. If any animal which you may eat dies, whoever touches its carcass shall be unclean until evening. And whoever eats of its carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. Whoever carries the carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. Any questions on this one?
I'm gonna eat it alive.
If it dies naturally. It's talking about a carcass.
Oh,
So that's not something that's been butchered for eating.
And I assume that's because you don't know how long it's been there and you can start the disease. Because if you didn't kill it yourself, you don't know. And start the disease.
Now, I'm going to pull something out of this. Verse 40, the first part, mine read, and whoever eats of its carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean. Wait a second, didn't we just say we're not supposed to eat dead things? Remember that? I want to pull back the odd verse from back in Exodus. You remember that story we had about you shall not cook the goat in its mother's milk? Remember that weird discussion we had? For those of you guys who weren't here, cooking a rancid piece of meat and milk pull out the smell and the taste of the rancidness without removing the disease. It's a very common way to poison your enemy. I'm just saying. That's why they say don't go in its mother's milk. It was talking about political sabotage. It wasn't saying you can't really eat dairy and meat together. Very strict Jews today take that verse as the reason why you can't have a cheeseburger. You can have a grilled cheese or you can have a hamburger, but you can't have them both. But that's not what it's getting at all.
Wait, did Jews call it grilled cheese or cheese cutter?
That's just important to eat.
Have to be sharper on.
There's a point where shooter out because to be honest with you, they didn't have white bread. They didn't have sliced bread, so they could fondue it, they could dip their bread in the cheese. So I think that this thing is here, whoever eats of its carcass. If a person found out that they had been given breast, they would find, there's a fear in there that they had done something to make themselves wrong with God. What this says is, if you found out that you have eaten something that was dead and should not really have been served, you're unclean, wash yourself, do everything you should, and in the morning you're fine.
no, but worried what the roadkill.
Don't worry if someone has done something mean to you by serving you roadkill, that's not your fault. But yes, you are unclean, so just do the daily ritual, make yourself pure before God, and you're okay. That's why I think this section. Because any good Jew is not going to say, man, Bessie just died, can we go ahead and eat her? Well, let's just not tell the neighbor, we're gonna have barbecue, we'll cook a Bessie. She died, but sure, the meat's fine, you know. I don't know why she died, you should eat it. One thing, if you kill Bessie, and you butcher Bessie, and you eat her.
What, on most animals, like cattle and whatever, you're supposed to hang in butter. Now, if they die, they wait there for a couple hours. That's all it was.
you remember when we talked about the sacrifices? What did it say? Before you throw it up on the altar to cook it, you drain all the blood out. Don't eat the blood.
That's why when you're on the push the rabbits, we come on the things for. We have hours, so.
So again, that's a principle we understand. There is a reason why the people of the British Isles are a little odd. They eat blood sausage. It's on them.
We had, and, you know, our government has laws about. Like, we had a steer that we were loaded to take, but. And it broke its leg as it was going up the ramp. Now, you can't take it all the way from where it was over to Craigville. So we called and they said, you can't kill it because government says we have to kill it. So we can't handle it if you bring it to us. So we got the backhoe for work. Hung it up on the backhoe and butchered it ourselves.
So why is that?
We had to drain the blood and it was a sanitary. That's the government.
Why couldn't the butcher shop handle your cattle?
Because they had to be the one to kill it.
They had to be the one to kill it, so they knew how it died, so they knew it wasn't a diseased animal. And anytime you have a broken bone or a wound on an animal, and you weren't there to witness what it was, you cannot prove that it's not infected and that it won't get people sick. Because even though they might cut your piece up, there's nothing that says that a little bit of that might be on the blade when they cut the next piece up, and now you've contaminated everybody's meat. Okay. It goes back to these principles.
Well, and even the butcher shop, there's no guarantee you're gonna get that whole beef
Right.
that you took in, I mean.
Yeah.
Let's be
They
honest.
do their best.
Yeah.
But an honest butcher shop will say, we do our best to give you everything that we can give you, but you're not gonna get everything. There's no guarantee.
So you could get,
Parts of it doesn't.
Right.
So, you're good with that little paragraph, but you see that nice little thing they threw in there? They're just, for that person who's a worry ward, did they serve me food that would make me unclean? Well, it's a night. Move on. Okay, 41 to 45. Every swarming thing that swarms on the ground is detestable, it shall not be eaten. Whatever goes on its belly, or whatever goes on all fours, or whatever has 10 feet, any swarming thing that swarms on the ground, you shall not eat, but they are detestable. You shall not make yourselves detestable with any swarming thing that swarms, and you shall not defile yourself with them and become unclean through them. For I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves, therefore, and be holy, for I am. You shall not defile yourself with any swarming thing that crawls on the ground. And the Lord who brought you up out of the land of Egypt to be your God, you shall therefore be holy, for I am.
No deep fried, no.
No deep fried willy worm, no snakes of any kind,
The bees.
no bees. Why no bees? They swarm, but can you eat the honey? Honey is considered a wild thing, and it depends on where the honey is in a hive, it's clean. But bees were notorious for finding a dead carcass and making their hives in the carcass. And that honey is not. Yes. The reason, anything that swarms, anything, the primary thing I think of, what my professor said is, you might remember in Indiana Jones, when he pulls over the thing and there's all the snakes down there, they're just kind of writhing all over each other. That's swarming. Any animal that will writhe all over its comrades, whether it's a bee or snakes or anything like that, there is nothing that guarantees you that when there's one that's diseased, it won't spread it to any of the rest of them. So any animal that does that kind of behavior Just ignore it. Stay away from it.
There'd be worms too, you had a can of worms.
Yep.
Well, wouldn't some snakes fall under the eat? I mean, I've seen snakes eat rabbits,
Oh, yeah.
so they eat other,
Anything that crawls on the ground, even if it's a legless lizard, if it crawls on the ground, he's saying just, they exist. There are legless lizards.
You think,
Snakes eat other snakes. All of these creatures will eat either dead things, or they'll eat diseased things, or they'll eat other animals. Again, we're still falling in that same category. And there's nothing that when it swarms and it bumps up against each other and does all this stuff, there's nothing that guarantees that it will be clean.
when I was a Boy Scout, the Boy Scout camp, they had snakes in a glass cage, and they were feeding them, and they fed them a toad. And both snakes wanted a toad. So they kind of fought back and forth, and finally the big snake, longer snake, got the toad. Well, that made the smaller snake upset, so it started to swallow the longer snake. Not realizing there wasn't enough room, so he got him 3/4 of the way in, and then he had to spit him out. By that time, the big snake was put out the toad. Toad didn't make it.
So Madison chose the color thing, she did her snake thing. Now, this is the biggest part. For I am the Lord who brought you out of Egypt to you, God. Shut there, be holy. This sounds like a big deal, because are we really holy in our service? When we think of holiness as what is ascribed to God, there's no way. But if you remember, holy means set aside. They were to be priests to the nations, remember? And so by this practice, by the fact that they lived long, by the fact that they were healthy, by the fact that they didn't have the miscarriages, by the fact that God seemed to be providing for them in ways that didn't make sense, it actually became that their life was assigned to all the people around them. And therefore, they would be drawing the peoples unto God.
Now, with this, these instructions were given to the priests. The people didn't get these instructions.
Well, okay, if you remember, back at Exodus, at Mount Sinai, 10 commandments were given to everybody. Remember that? But the people were afraid. They said, no, Moses, you go talk to God for us. So from that point forward, God speaks through his priests and his prophets, but these words were meant to be given to everyone. So this would be public knowledge. Okay, here's God's rules for along. I don't know yesterday's rules. Oh, great rules. No, these weren't. These are for our good. What? Public notice number 5. Please do not eat the swarming things. Fred brought back the snakes, and now he's got the disease, and he's out of quarantine outside the camp. He will be for the next 40 days. Do not eat the swarming things. Notice number 6.
with a picture of where.
With a picture of Fred. God gives these rules on the one hand so that we can receive his blessings. But every time God blesses us, remember what God said to Abraham? I will bless you, and through you all the nations of the world will be blessed. He blesses us not so that we get the blessing. He blesses us so that we can be a blessing to the world.
You're feeling you make watching over your shoulder. I think it was multi-screen, so it was really bugging me.
Let's finish the chapter. 46 and 47. This is the law about beast and bird and every living creature that moves through the waters and every creature that swarms on the ground, to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean, and between the living creatures that may be eaten and the living creatures that may not. Questions?
Well, I think that we're all.
And you probably won't live to 120, so you're gonna lose years.
Yeah.
You know, the irony of it is we eat a lot of things that are on that list. We shouldn't. But God also said the days of man will be 120 years. How many people actually live to 101? Not very many. But how many actually live this way? Not very many anymore, right? So if you don't do what God says, you don't get all God's benefits.
In light of what we just talked about. We, were at a relative of Sarah's. Right, we got married and he served bridal ship. And it was a snake, I mean, it was not the real thing about it. But they posted in milk. Now I think about it.
Now you might know why. Stop some of that.
Yeah.
We've only got 3 minutes, and yes, the next chapter is very short, but it will require some more discussion than what 3 minutes can give. So we'll hold that. For the record, I'm sorry that I won't be here next week. I'll be in Texas, so in 2 weeks we will come back together. And we will discuss purification and leprosy and cleansing lepers. We'll probably go with that pretty fast. And bodily discharges. Yeah! So we could probably do 12, 13, 14, and 15. Because while no one really wants to discuss that in detail, unless there's some crazy person who was a nurse or something like that, you know, we will deal with them. It will take as long as it takes, but realistically, all of these 4 chapters kind of. I'm not saying that a woman on her period is the same thing as a leper. It's not what I'm saying at all. Just saying that they have some of the same principles for staying clean. So, any final thoughts? It's good to be back. Odd place to start, but you know, there could be worse places. You could have started with bodily discharge. No final thoughts? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this learning, this reminder that you really do want us. You want us to live good, long, healthy lives. And Lord, you've given us principles. And even in the midst of that, while we have liberty today, Lord, I'm grateful that you still want to do that. So Lord, help us to hear from you what you want from us. May we do our best to live holy lives as you've called us to. Whether it's the strictest adherence to the kosher laws or something with some more freedom to it. Lord, may we truly live lives that exhibit you to the world. May we be a blessing to all those we encounter. So in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Blessings with you all. Again, I'll see you in 2 weeks, and we will pick up from there. As for the new, the 3 of you, if you encounter anything over the next couple of weeks and you've got questions, don't hesitate to ask. Everybody else knows this. Some people are more apt to ask the questions, some kind of hold them and bring them back. We'll take it either way. So, blessings. Be safe. Get home.
We don't text this one.
You could just sit there. I wish they don't do this.
Where I'm texting.
Yeah.
Too bad.